The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization Show, the home of Googleization Nation, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about the crazy shift going on in the world of business, technology, and HR. Here's your host, Ira Wolf, and co-host Keith Campagna.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to Googleization Nation. We hope you, your teams, and your families are safe, staying healthy, and hopefully practicing distancing prevention so we can get all over this thing. It does look like it's going to be a few weeks away from the apex of the crisis, unfortunately. And while the end date's still a bit evasive, we know a couple things for sure. And in today's world of uncertainty, that's good. What we do know for sure, and everyone agrees on this, the COVID-19 crisis will pass. Your businesses are going to reopen. Employees are going to be called back. So there will be jobs, and customers are going to come back too. So just for a minute, I want everybody to think forward. And when that day finally arrives and our state and local officials declared it's okay to open and your employees are ready to walk through that front door, how prepared are you to reboard, re-assimilate them? What's that going to look like? Because some of them, and hopefully many of them, will be really excited to get back to work. But there's quite a few people who are going to be really anxious, fearful, traumatized, stressed, worried, and some might even be grieving a loss of a loved one or a neighbor or a friend, because it's going to affect a lot of us. So what we decided to do for today's show, we're going to start the road to recovery because there is no playbook for business after COVID-19. Everybody's writing the story. And there's a real opportunity for companies to do it right, to be prepared, because most of us, or almost all of us, including the government, and I don't think there was any business on this planet that was prepared for what was going to come. So there's a lot of opportunities to step up and make the process uneventful and as caring as possible. So we've brought together two guests today, two experts. And we're going to start this, and hopefully in the next few weeks, this will be our focus. And I've got a lot of live stream interviews lined up. So hopefully you'll connect with me and Keith, and I'll be doing some live streams with other experts. I've been spending a lot of time figuring that out. But the first expert we've got is Bo Mitchell. He spent his entire adult life dealing with emergencies, nothing like a pandemic, but certainly epidemics and other crises. He now helps companies get through everything from natural disasters to active shooters, and more importantly, he helps prepare people to get through those. And he's president of 911. So Bo's going to be with us in just a few minutes. And then following that, we're going to have Jason Cochran, who is an educational and cognitive psychologist. And he and I met through a mutual friend the other day, and we were talking, and we both shared a similar outlook that there is going to be a lot of people, especially in the healthcare industry, there's going to be a lot of people that are traumatized to the extent that they actually may experience PTSD or similar symptoms. And he got me right away. He got me hooked. There's a whole lot of things, most importantly, that companies can do right now to prepare for this, to help their employees, to minimize that. And it's beyond just saying, oh, we've got an employee assistance program. So we've got a lot to talk about today, and we're going to get to Bo shortly, and then we'll bring on Jason about the middle of the show. Of course, we've got to thank Zor.ai and Success Performance Solutions for helping us do this every week, for being sponsors of Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization. And Keith, you were quiet this week, didn't hear from you, so you must have had a busy week.
Yeah, Ira. There's something to be said for the shift in the marketplace right now. And, I spend a lot of time talking to sales leaders, and there's just been so much activity going on in terms of collaboration, people trying to understand, maybe not understand, but at least try to get some sort of a clear view, a clear line of sight with what to do the next 2, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. And eventually those conversations just wind up waning off into like a dark abyss that nobody really knows where we'll be. But what I will tell you is that, following the sentiment of what we're trying to do here on the show here, it's a pleasant surprise for me to hear that more of the sales leaders that are out there are, now that the quarter is over, they're moving towards okay, let's make things easier for the next 30 days. What do we got to do to make things easier for not just our employees, but for our customers? And that's what really makes it really dynamic and what's been keeping me busy. So there's a lot of compassion. There's a lot of creativity that's starting to build in terms of the momentum I'm seeing, which for a guy like me, I'm more than happy about that, just because, it's going to get, I feel like it's going to get a little bit trickier before it gets easier. So this is, people need to see the blueprint.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, the longer it goes, the trickier it's going to get. And again, part of it is the uncertainty. There is not that magic date. Even if the pronouncement comes down, and I really don't think it's going to be April 30th. From most indications, this is probably going to go through maybe May 31st. But let's say June 1st. Business, for some miracle, business goes back to normal. I think there's a lot of people that expect that as soon as we open the doors, everybody's going to come back. And we talked about that last week and the last few weeks, that a lot of people, I know a lot of people that have already changed jobs, or that decided they're not going to go back to taking 2 hours out every day to commute because they got the work done when they were home. And so there's going to be a little bit of moving around to the chess pieces of talent. So that's going to be there. But the thing that really, it concerns me, but there's a real opportunity here. There has been a movement about the employee experience, about culture, a sensitivity, and there's a lot of things companies can be doing now, employers, managers, to reach out to their people. And sometimes it's just checking in once a day. Is there anything we can do? How can we help? Some are keeping them on the payroll. Some can't afford to do that, but there are other ways to be able to do that. And they're working hard to be able to do that. But sometimes it's just maintaining that connectivity. And again, just because they're not showing up for work doesn't mean that they're not important. And you can't just think about what to do. You got to connect. And so I was really excited about having this show dedicated to starting that. And as I said, to open the show, there is no playbook. I was on a call yesterday with Josh Burson, and most people know Josh, and he had people from IBM, the NBA, Novartis, and some of the largest, most successful companies in the world and organizations. Every one of them is struggling. So it doesn't mean that small businesses can't say that a large company, they have a lot of resources. They're scrambling, and they've got a couple 100,000 employees to deal with. So everybody's in this together, and it's a really nice opportunity to step up. And I know Jason, Bo has a lot of great suggestions, but Bo does too. And I'm really excited to get to Jason Cochran's talk. So we are. I want to be able to get, not here. I want to hear from them. You want to hear from them. And so we're going to take a very, very short break and get Bo teed up to bring him on. So we're going to do a quick commercial. We're going to hear from Success Performance Solutions first. And then later in the show, we'll hear from Zor.ai. We are live today. If you have a question, I'm not sure if we're going to have how much time we're going to have to actually deal with the live questions. But if you want to put something in the chat, please do so. We'll make sure we get it addressed, or make sure that Bo or Josh can take care of it afterwards, or Jason can take care of it afterwards. So right now we're going to hear from Success Performance Solutions, and we'll be right back with Bo Mitchell.
Listen carefully. Up to 9 out of 10 job candidates visiting your company career page leave before completing an application. You heard that right. 90% of candidates who want to apply for a job at your company don't. That's just plain crazy, especially in today's tight labor market. Candidate experience matters. Stop turning candidates away. Let Success Performance Solutions help. Call us at 800-803-4303 or register at successperformancesolutions.com/W4CY. Schedule a no-obligation consultation and get special access to insider tips to recruit faster and hire smarter.
Well, welcome back to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization show. I'm Ira Wolf. For the next few minutes, I want everybody just to take a step back and think forward, kind of look at the big picture, look where we're headed out just a few weeks from now. That day, there's going to be one day in the upcoming soon that we've been anticipating for quite a while. Your state and local officials finally give you that all clear signal that it's okay to come back to work. You've notified your customers, and your employees should be arriving any minute now. What should you be thinking about? How should you be prepared for that to happen uneventfully? And my guest for this segment is Bo Mitchell. He has an urgent warning for you. If you're an employer, if you're an organization, doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit, for-profit, corporate, small business, whatever it is, that you need to think about that. You need an emergency plan for re-assimilating your workforce. Because there are a lot of people who stopped going to work just a few weeks ago. And they're going to be returning to your workforce, to your offices, as very, very different people. I'm not even mentioning about the healthcare workers and all the first responders who we're very grateful with. And I just want to send a shout out to everybody who's on that front line. They are at war, and they're going to experience the same things that our veterans do coming back from war. Many employees are going to be filled with grief and fear and anxiety and suspicion, and they're going to be traumatized from this, even if they weren't on those front lines. Even if you weren't personally affected by COVID-19, you likely know someone who has been, and so will these employees. It might be a loved one that was affected, or a friend, or a neighbor, or maybe they just associated with a celebrity. I just saw just minutes ago, Chris Cuomo, who many people know, tested positive. So there's going to be so many people that were affected by this. So to get back to work, you're going to have to be prepared, because there's employees that are probably having nightmares about the thought of this. So I reached out to Bo Mitchell. He's seen the consequences of emergencies from natural disasters to active shooters for basically his entire adult life. He was first a police commissioner in Connecticut, and now he is president of 911 Consulting. So Bo, welcome to Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization.
Thanks, Ira. I served in the United States Army, and we had a lot of planning that we did there. One of the first rules in the planning world in the United States Army is it's all happened before and it all happened again. So while everybody wants to think that their situation right now at their workplace or at their work from home is the first time it's ever happened, and it is unusual, even unique, well, the good news is, if there is any good news, is that it's all happened before. And the analogy I would use is soldiers in combat. You may think that's overreach, but think about it. You're at home right now. You've been ordered to do that, just like in the Army. You've been ordered to be in a place where you're going to protect you and your family. There's an enemy out there that can strike you at any time. You're going to be doing this for 1, 2, 3, 4 months. In the United States Army, they try to cycle you out every 30 days of combat to give you R&R, rest and relaxation. Very important, because it's all about making sure that your troops are ready to fight and continue to fight. Here, you're not going to have an opportunity to do that. So employees are going to go back to work day one with PTSD. That's not an overstatement. That's not a misstatement. That is absolute truth, because they've been through a combat situation and they've been doing it probably for 90, 120, and maybe long days and maybe longer. And unlike the soldier in the field who only worries about himself moment to moment, here you've had to worry moment to moment as an employee and your family. So the pressures are just incredible. I'm not sure that management really understands this. And when they come back, in my view, they're going to have a whole program, a whole long list of programs to process everybody back in. I would look at it as if they were onboarding all of their employees in a brand new hire situation and get everybody back to work.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I mentioned earlier, I said re-assimilating, but I've actually, I don't know if I've coined it, but it came up the other day that people need to think about a reboarding process, not onboarding for the first time, but a reboarding process to get everybody, back in the swing of things. And I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it, so I appreciate it. I put out a call for people who were thinking about it, and I probably got 3 or 4 I got about 40 responses, but there were 3 or 4 responses that talked about, we have an employee assistance program. That's important, but that's a great benefit, but you're talking about much more than that. You're talking about people are going to have to go out and reach out to professionals like you to help prepare it, or even bring psychologists on team like they do after a school shooting. But beyond just saying, we have an employee assistance program, what should companies be preparing for?
Yeah, I think using an employee assistance program as the one and only answer to this very complex problem. And Ira, my mother taught me, for every complex problem, there's a simple solution that's always wrong. And this is a complex problem. And seeing I've got an emergency assistance program is a simple solution that's just wrong. It's not wrong of it by itself. It just doesn't recognize the enormous complexities that are going on here. So, this happened after 9/11. Everybody in the country was affected at the workplace that very day and the next day and so on. There were a lot of employers who did this right as far as talking and communicating with their employees and making sure that everybody was settled in. And there were a lot of people who did it wrong. So the idea, and that's what's going to happen here. There's going to be a bell-shaped curve, but only a few are going to, I think, have even asked this question as you and I are right now. And I have and it's my feeling, and I've been doing this for 35 years, that there are going to be a lot of employers who the boss, the top guy or woman, who's going to come back and say, well, welcome back. Isn't this great? Get to work and have a nice day. Well, that's going to fail because it doesn't recognize that these people have been through combat. And the analogy is not at all wrong, or in fact, it may be weak, because in combat, you're only worrying about yourself and your buddies, of course, but here you're worried about your family as well for 2, 3, 4 months. So they really have to get a program going, which brings us to the other part that you asked about, which is what should I be doing right now? Well, while they're in combat, which is really preparatory to what they're going to do when they come back. And again, the military's been doing this for a couple of thousand years. And the way they've learned that this goes right is the person at the very top is to say, I'm with you, we're all in this together, and here's what we're going to do as we go through each phase of our experience in this regard. But it has to break down into small teams. So if you're in a company with, or an organization with 100 people, certainly the top person has to say something. But how does that break down into your groups and your departments of 4 and 5? Maybe your top guy is great at this. Maybe the rest of the people aren't, because this is a skill that's very, very high. It's a big deal. And not everybody's been trained to do this. And now they have to do it with a combat experience. So, hey, welcome back and have a nice day is not going to work. And what are they doing right now, today, to work with their people and say, I understand that you're under this kind of pressure. We still have to get the work done. We learned in the Army that the best thing to do when people don't let people be idle. Give them a job. If they have a job, make sure that they're doing it. If that job can't be done from work from home, give them a new job. But they want that. Give them purpose. Lead them. most corporations, most nonprofits, most schools are really not well led. There's sort of an inertia from management. Hey, you guys have been doing this for years. You know what to do. Go ahead and do it. Okay, if that works operationally on a day-to-day basis, God bless you. But we're not in a day-to-day basis now. We're in something much, much different. And I'm not sure managements across this great land of ours and the 5+ million employers in the United States of America have even recognized this for their 160 million Americans who were working full and part-time before this fell apart.
Mm-hmm. So, again, we just have a few minutes here, and we're definitely going to get you back for an extended program, or people can reach out to you. So we'll get them that information as well. But I work with a lot of small, medium-sized businesses, privately owned. Many of them definitely don't have the resources. They depend on outside agencies, whether it's government or other people to help them through a situation like this. So if I'm the owner of a let's say a 100-employee business, what's something other than contacting my employees, reaching out to them, maybe having a Zoom call just like this? What are some other steps that they should immediately take now to get ready for that reopening, whether it's going to be 30 days or 60 days or 90 days from now?
Well, I watched this in the U.S. Army. It's about leadership. And leadership can come in many different forms. Maybe in a nonprofit of 100 people, it's going to be a lot different than in a manufacturing setting of 100 people. But the people who are there have to exercise leadership. They have to be in an affirmative outreach, not just laying back and waiting for the questions. Is that a town hall? Is that a video town hall? Is that one-on-one between the immediate supervisors and his or her immediate team? And it has to be done, I say, almost on a daily basis, as it would be in the field during a combat situation. You just don't send the people out there and then go for coffee. You are out there and you're constantly doing this. It's a lot of work.
Okay.
It's a lot of time expenditure, and it's very, very emotional, because what you're going to get back to that team of 5 or the organization with 100 is a lot of concern, a lot of stress, which you're going to have to share and then reflect back on them by way of leadership and consolation and care and calm to get this job done day in, day out.
Okay. So I'm going to use your military analogies and say that a lot of these people are going to need a boot camp on leadership. They needed it before. A lot of them weren't great leaders. They weren't great supervisors. They were people that were promoted into that position because of tenure. And one of the biggest problems we've had before this is that supervisors and managers weren't very good communicators to their people. Lack of empathy, lack of emotional intelligence, whatever term you want to use. So we've got 30 days. We've got time to have this boot camp. Who do they go to, or what are some of the skills that they should look for, or do they reach out to someone like you who can help them through that? What are, again, I'm looking for something tangible, because I know I work with a lot of people, and I wouldn't want, if I was the owner of some of these businesses, I would not want my supervisors being the direct contact with those employees.
Well, I hear you loud and clear, and I think your description is 100% accurate. But this is why we pay the top guy or woman the big money. In a field army situation, if a colonel in charge of a brigade is moving around, or a captain in charge of a company of 100 people, and he sees that his sergeants and his lieutenants aren't working well, he replaces them right then and there, if he's going to get the job done. It has to be done, and it has to be done immediately. To say, oh, we'll do this when they come back, well, the damage will be done, and you might as well just keep them in there, because you're not changing anything. So I think you gotta walk around. You have to inspect. You have to engage. You have to be affirmative in this outreach. These are skills that most managers have never had to exercise before. So is there a place to go? Well, I don't know that we have an officers training school, an OCS for managers now, and there are tens of thousands, indeed hundreds of thousands of them who would need the kind of orientation and training that we're talking about. I guess the American Management Association might have that, but these training courses for that kind of thing are great, but not for this kind of intensity and combat situation. And again, I don't think I'm exaggerating even on iota about what's going on here, because we've never done this on this scale before.
I absolutely agree. By the way, we actually have an online, we have a partner, and they do online micro-training. And there is actually a pandemic preparedness, which is not necessarily specific to managers, but there are some online micro-learning programs for managers. And it may not be directly associated with a trauma like this or an event like this, but it is about helping people be more compassionate and more empathetic and how to communicate during a crisis. So there are programs out there that people can learn as our boot camp on the spot, on the fly. One of my other concerns, and I got to watch our time here, is that, just get your opinion, there are a lot of companies that I'm sure will default to HR, that the leader says, I'm not very good. That's your role to send out this message. Obviously, my opinion would be that they should be part of this solution, but the voice needs to come from managers and supervisors, not through HR. Am I correct?
Absolutely. This is a top-down situation. And I tell you, it works. Just getting personally engaged, doing an inspection, if you can't do that in person, by a video. When you go back and look at these films from the 1940s and World War II, whether it's Churchill visiting his troops in the field, Eisenhower, this stuff works. And it is a skill, and I'm not going to say that skill isn't really, really sharp and hard to do. But in the end, you got to start with your commitment. I am going to go talk to all these people. I am going to outreach. I'm going to find out what the problems are. I'm going to tell them what the mission is. Tell it over and over and over. Keep it short. Keep it sweet. Listen. These are skills you're going to have to, if you don't have them already, work with. HR can be a big help, but this is all top down. So if somebody says, welcome back, if you have a problem, call HR, that's going to fail. And the people in HR may be very good at this, but that's not their skill is going to be determinative, but alone they can't do it.
Bo, I thank you for your service. I thank you for being ahead of this curve, for all the work you've done in the past, and you're going to have a lot of work to do in the future. I want to get you back. I want to have an extended conversation. We talked about maybe doing a live stream for the next few weeks, which I hope we can do one-on-one. You've got a ton of valuable information. If someone wants to reach out to you now and get in touch with you and take your advice, how can they do that?
Bo Mitchell, BOMITCHELL at 911consulting.net. Bo Mitchell at 911consulting.net. Our phone number is 203-563-9999. You can remember that, 563-9999, and we'll answer the phone and give you the help you need.
And thanks again very much. We've been talking with Bo Mitchell from 911 Consulting about post. What happens? How do you get your employees back to work, but not just back to work? How do we get them back to work whole? Because a lot of people are going to be stressed out and anxious and traumatized from the events, and we still don't have a date. We don't have an outcome, and we're all living in this world of uncertainty and complexity. Bo, I thank you for all you've done as in the military, as a first responder, and especially now helping us live safer and healthier lives. I appreciate it very much.
Let's be careful out there, Myra.
Absolutely.
Imagine how your company would grow if your candidate experience earned a 99% approval rating. Well, to get to 99%, you need the 3 best letters in recruitment technology, XOR. Zoar's text bots, chat bots, and audio bots increased IKEA's candidate conversion rate 455%. Zoar decreases candidate drop-off rates, improves your candidate experience, and collects analytics for future strategies. To learn more, check out Zoar.ai. That's XOR.ai.
Hey, so welcome back, everyone. This is Ira Wolf. I'm the host, and my co-host is Keith Compagnic. I don't even remember what I do anymore. It's so busy. So taking on so many roles. And you heard from Bo Mitchell from 911 Consulting, certainly a little bit of a military.
You there, buddy?
Yep, I'm still here.
All right, you're here. We lost Ira. This happens from time to time. What was your take? Were you able to get any takeaways from that, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. That whole idea that there's not a playbook for this, I 100% agree with that, but that we don't want to use that as leaders, to allow that to be an excuse to just conduct business as usual, that there's still some clear steps that we can take to prepare as best we can.
Sure.
For these next 30 days.
Sure.
But that don't beat ourselves up, because this is uncharted territory for all of us across the world.
Why don't you, with that in mind, why don't you share with our audience how you got to know all that as well as you do? What have you been doing? What keeps you busy?
Sure, absolutely. So my background is I'm an educational and cognitive psychologist. Worked in schools for 12 years. With teachers, students, families, education leaders, on helping students deal with trauma, any kind of learning challenges, behavioral, emotional challenges that they had, understanding different task demands so that they could perform despite all of the challenges that might be in front of them. And then got partnered up with some amazing partners of mine, and we created I Aspire to try and help businesses as well with this, understanding that, that those challenges and resiliency aren't just things that kids experience when they're in school, but these are things that affect all of us, regardless of what our job is, where we live in the world. And if there were some ways that we could help them develop some of those, what we call soft skills or values, that those things can help them in all the different spheres of their life. So there's always been that passion to try and help people grow and develop and be the best versions of themselves, not just so that they are a better teammate and an employee, but so that they can be at their very best for all the other spheres of their life too. Because I believe when that happens, we all get better, companies and people all around the world.
How about it? Yep.
Hey guys, can you hear me again?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. I'm not sure what happened. Welcome to the internet, right? So, welcome to uncertainty and complexity.
It's the coronavirus.
So hey, Jason, when we talked the other day, and this is what resonated. This is this whole idea. I said that, and Bo brought this up, and you did too in an email he sent me. After 9/11. Anytime there was a book dropped, or after a school shooting, anytime there's a book dropped or there's a backfire, or 9/11, walking on the plane for the first time, walking into an airport, there was an uneasiness. And I actually flew to Malaysia a week after 9/11, so you can imagine that. So an employee walks back in. There's a meeting. Somebody sniffles. Somebody coughs. Somebody, basically sneezes, I said they're sitting at a table, they sneeze into their hands. There's going to be this whole kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but, an emotional rush that goes through a lot of people. Because the pandemic's, the virus isn't going to end. Until we get a vaccine and everybody gets immune, it's still going to be a problem. What are some hard tips? What are some things employers, managers, HR needs to be doing right now, especially on attitude? And you shared this, so I'll let you run with it. But is that I love that you said that they need to accept things will be different for a while.
Yeah, absolutely, Ira. Yeah, things are going to be different for a while, and that's okay. Just like you mentioned, that first time you got on a plane after 9/11, changes, your inner thoughts, your dialogue, your feelings a little bit more. Your heart is probably racing a little bit more. And those are physical signs many times of, stress, anxiety, trauma, whatever you want to call it. And the way that our brains work is that, traumatic events, especially if they happen over a period of time, those get locked in our brains pretty quickly and easily as memory traces. And so what we have to be cognizant of is that when those things get triggered, for instance, you use the example, the first time you head back to work, if you're in a meeting and you're seated next to someone who sneezes, that initial reaction is going to trigger that memory trace in your head of thinking about the dangers of that, having gone through this pandemic. So what we have to do is we have to help people work on that inner dialogue in their heads to prepare them for that. So when that event does happen, that they might have some better repertoire of skills that they have practiced ahead of time to make sure that they kind of deal with that situation in an appropriate way. Inner dialogue is an interesting concept. Kate Murphy, just in 2019, she wrote an amazing book on the science of listening. And one of the biggest takeaways for me is that we all have this inner dialogue in our heads as to how we talk to ourselves throughout the day. And the interesting thing from a brain science perspective is that inner dialogue that we have activates the exact same parts of our brain as when we're having dialogue with other people. And so one of the key takeaways from that research is, if you have negative inner thoughts and negative inner dialogue, that's why so many people don't like to think about their thinking. It's because it would be no different than having a conversation with an overtly negative person, even outside of our own heads. And so as much preparation as we can do to try and help people develop some positive thought stems and challenge some of those irrational thought patterns that might creep up in their head is going to be one of the best tactics that we can do now before people actually get back into the workplace to help them be prepared to deal with some of those autonomic or automatic responses that they might have in certain situations like that.
Are there any exercises or are there anything that we can do to kind of reverse that or remap those thought processes?
Yeah, absolutely. This is where cognitive behavioral therapy and rational emotive behavior therapy over the decades have been really helpful on the psychology side of things. And certainly, we're kind of drawing a line of distinction between, actual psychotherapy versus what are the things that can be done, on the business side as a tier 1 support for people as they reorient to the workplace. And so, just want to make sure the next things I share aren't misconstrued as therapy, but rather just kind of tier 1 interventions. And that would be, let's focus on some cognitive restructuring, basic things where you can identify some of those irrational beliefs you might have, and then try to replace those with positive belief statements. And so, for instance, maybe one of the false belief statements a person might have in their head is that person just doesn't care. That's why they sneezed and they didn't cover, their nose or their mouth. Well, that's probably not the case. Most likely the sneeze came about pretty quickly and maybe they didn't have the time to get their hand or their arm up, to block it. And so, restructuring that in your head and saying to yourself, we're all doing the best that we can in light of the circumstances. And then repeating those kind of positive thoughts in your head and monitoring those thoughts are going to be a really powerful way that you can make sure, especially as the leader of an organization, that you are thinking about your thinking before you even re-engage and get back into the workplace to try and do some self-work and identify some of those irrational or negative thoughts so that you'll be able to replace those with positive, affirming thoughts once you're ready to head back and re-assimilate.
Jason, I appreciate your answer in so many different ways. But with keeping an eye on the time here, I kind of want to take that to the next level and offer you the following scenario. I speak that way to my boss, or if you're in a room and you're trying to promote exactly what you just said, which really takes the degree of self-awareness. To even begin to think about your thoughts, right? It's just a natural progression. What I'm noticing out there is that a lot of people, and I think this will be the case once the business gets back to usual, so quote unquote, is that people are in a stressed mindset. And, you and I know, Ira knows that when you're in a stressed mindset, you cannot think about compassion and empathy and patience. It's just not the way your brain works. So is there an easy way, or at least a little bit of a way, to help somebody who confronts what you just said as being woo-woo or leave me alone because that stuff doesn't work and I'm too stressed to worry about that right now?
Sure, absolutely. If it's one of those things that you don't plan and you don't practice ahead of time, then it's going to be one of those things where you can't really expect different results other than the reaction that happens in the moment, right? And so this would be something that is very much proactive, something that you're starting to do today, even while your workforce might be remote, that you're going to start engaging in some of these activities to help your people prepare for that. We just so happen at I Aspire, we have coaching that works on this, micro coaching. I heard you mention earlier that's one of the partners that you have, that works on some of these skills like empathy and listening, communication, adaptability. And those are things that we try to work on as well, through text and through email with people to help them be working on these things. So these are things that you can work on your own time at home to kind of prepare your mindset. Even if you haven't engaged in something like this before, we can start you at the very ground levels of starting to develop the word I liked that you used, which is self-awareness, so that you can start cultivating those things and be a little bit more prepared. Probably not 100%, but if we can take you from maybe 5% up to 20 or 25%, then hopefully that means the adaptability will kind of take root a little bit faster once they are re-assimilated in the workplace.
What are some guidelines? I mean, I know you and I met through indirectly through Lena Graves, who will be a guest on and a good friend of ours, and Lena's certainly expertise is culture. What's the message, or what when you're one-on-one with a leader? What are the things that they need to do now differently? And again, working with, realizing that they've got a remote workforce and they don't see everybody every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree that this ties back into culture, for an organization, similar to what you mentioned that Lena would say, that culture is going to be the glue that holds everything together in your organization. That was true before the pandemic hit, and I think it's going to be even more true now. It was already in the top 2 of what most people want and they expect from their employer. And so if the leaders don't already have a clearly articulated culture strategy that's part of their business plan, that is what we are really focusing on helping them with right now, is making sure that there is a very clear culture strategy that's in place. So when their people are back, that there's very clear articulation of the values and traits of the organization in observable terms to help everyone understand what those are and aren't. And those can be the anchors or the actual handles for people that they hold on to while they're trying to weather this storm. Is okay, this situation may have just happened. What are some of the core values that we believe here at this organization? How do these maybe apply in the situation? Okay, I remember, trust is one of those core values. And I remember trust means, whatever the definition is for the organization. And then they put that into action, into how they actually behave and act. So making sure that there is a clearly articulated culture strategy, if there is not one, I think is going to be paramount for organizations and leaders to be able to touch everyone in the organization and have a system of support in place for people whenever they come back, every single person in the organization.
I like that term. I like that how you articulate that, that there should be a culture strategy. I think most people just think culture is a thing that exists. It's sort of like the air. You walk into a room and there's an attitude, or there's an air, or there's values that come from that. But you can have a strategy to shape that. So I really appreciate that. Jason. Hey, we're unfortunately, we can talk forever, and we will. We're going to get you back to this, or we're going to do, as I said, I'm trying to put together a few panels or some short interviews with people and just continue hammering home the opportunity here that companies have. I mean, again, there's a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of people looking for support. Employers have a great opportunity to do that. We will get back to being whole again, and whether you're part of it or not is probably going to depend on your culture and your leadership and what you do in the meantime. So, Jason, how can people get a hold of you to personally and for the company?
Yeah, absolutely. You can get a hold of me at Jason, JASON. Cochran, COCHRAN, at iaspire.io. And then you could also go to our website. It's iaspire.io. And we are a turnkey software solution for culture development for organizations. So would love to speak with any leaders and companies who are ready to take that next step in coming up with a clear culture strategy.
One final tip from you. What would be your 10-second commercial to someone? What?
I would say go watch an episode of Tiger King, because that show will help you detach from reality for a little bit, and you'll wonder to yourself, are we actually living in an episode of Tiger King right now? I know that's kind of tongue in cheek, but right now, sometimes we need to detach from reality a little bit. And it seems like everywhere I turn, people are talking about that show. So if that's one way that we all can detach and find some humor in what we're dealing with, that's great.
I'll have to take you up on that, because it's my, you're the second person in 12 hours, my best friend from high school, who was not only battling, obviously everybody's under this COVID, but he's also battling cancer. So we had a nice talk last night, and he said, hey, I don't know what you're watching. I know you're a movie guy, but that was one of his favorite shows. So it even helps somebody like that. So appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah. Jason Cochran, we'll be in touch offline. Definitely want to do a little bit more with you here. Great message, and appreciate it very much. Stay safe and stay healthy, please.
Thank you. Likewise, Ira and Keith.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers. Yeah. Ira, it's incredible that we can only do this for 50 minutes at a time, because I got the sense Jason was getting fired up. He was getting all momentum. And prior to COVID-19, we were talking about how ill-prepared HR leaders and businesses were to develop culture.
The shift hit the plan.
The shift hit the plan, my man. It's like you wrote a book about it.
Yeah, that is for sure. So again, I'm very serious, and Keith, hopefully you can get involved with it too. I know you got a lot of things on your plate, and the stay-at-home dad now has kids and all that sort of stuff, and working. You've worked remote before, but now you got a whole house full.
Life work integration, baby.
Yeah. So appreciate that, but definitely want to get people like Jason. I've made some fantastic contacts over the last week or so, and I'm just trying to get in touch with everybody. So hopefully you'll be involved with this, and this does fit really well with your life work integration. So
yes, sir.
So there goes.
By the way, the website has been revamped. KeithCompagnon.com. It's got all my projects on there.
Good. Have to go back and take a look at some. Sometimes that's the only way you and I communicate.
I know.
Through email and text. So hey, appreciate it. And I want to thank again Bo Mitchell from 911 Consulting and Jason Cochran from iAspire for great tips, helping us get ready, helping us write this playbook to get back to work and making us all whole. You've been listening to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. Keith and I really appreciate you being here. We're back. We're on live every week, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, w4cy.com. I want to thank Zor.ai and Success Performance Solutions again for being sponsors. And for anybody who wants to replay this, you can get it on Geeksgeezers, Googleization.com. We got everything archived there. Or if you're using a podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeart, you name it, we're probably there. Until next week, next episode of Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization. This is Ira Wolf and Keith Compagna. Don't let the shift hit your plans.